There's only one way to understand the life of Chuck. Originally, a short story written by Stephen King. Now, adapted for the screen by writer and director Mike Flanagan. I know Flanagan best from his 2019 film Dr. Sleep, which is a sequel to another classic Stephen King film adaptation, The Shining. The life of Chuck stars Tom Hiddleston, Karen Gillan, and Chiwetel Ejiofor. Fun fact, all Marvel film alumni. Hiddleston most obviously as Loki, and Ejiofor as Mordo from the Doctor Strange films, but some may not recognize Nebula out of her extensive blue and metal daughter of Thanos vibes. Most people know her as Thanos. Before we get deep into the review, like, subscribe, and now let's start at the end. Act 3, The Life of Chuck, ending explained. In order to understand this review, it's important to understand who Chuck is. But first, we should start by congratulating him on his retirement. Here's to 39 great years. Thanks for everything, Chuck. The life of Chuck is structured as a mystery. The film starts us in Act 3, challenging the viewer from the first frame. This sets you off on the right foot, as everything from this point should be seen with a question mark. I'm incredibly lucky because I got to see the life of Chuck almost knowing absolutely nothing about the film going in. I knew a couple of things. I heard some rumblings that the film was great, which is always good going into a movie. Another thing I knew about the film was that Tom Hiddleston was the star of the movie. And I'm a fan of Hiddleston from growing up with him playing Loki in the Marvel franchise. And I do think he's actually one of the MCU's best actors. Hiddleston brings a gravitas to the character of Chuck that may not be written in the script, but it sure can be felt on the screen. Now, I knew Hiddleston was going to be great. The other thing I knew about the film going in was that it was directed by Mike Flanagan and that it was written by Stephen King. Now, Stephen King wrote the original story, Flanagan rewrote it and directed the film, and I always love a writer-director combo. I like a true auteur. Now, what I know about Mike Flanagan is only one film, and he does have an extensive filmography, one which I need to go back and do a deep dive of. But the one film that I have seen of his was Dr. Sleep. Now, Dr. Sleep really surprised me. This is a sequel to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, and somehow Flanagan did the unthinkable, and he made a movie that is a decent sequel to The Shining, which honestly, I didn't believe it when I had heard it, but if you haven't seen Dr. Sleep, absolutely check that film out. It stars Ewan McGregor as an alcoholic adult Danny, and the movie does not disappoint. Anyway, back to Chuck. Those were the three things that I knew about the movie going in. I knew it was starring Hiddleston, I knew it was a Stephen King adaptation, and I knew it was directed by Mike Flanagan. I had heard it was going to be good, and I was excited to see the film. When the movie starts, the first shot is a title card reading Act 3. This got me giddy. No matter what was going to happen from here, the story was going to be told out of order. Now, I didn't know if this was a 5-act structure and there was going to be an Act 4, or if it was just going to be your standard 1, 2, 3. I assumed it was going to be a standard 1, 2, 3, but I loved that it was starting at 3. And what a 3, because the film starts and there is no Chuck. In fact, the beginning of the film stars Ejiofor's Marty Anderson. Anderson lives in a post-apocalyptic world where a part of California has fallen into the ocean. Volcanoes erupt all over the world, and natural disaster is commonplace. In fact, Ejiofor's Marty has a great conversation with neighbor Gus, played by Matthew Lillard. They talk about how a sinkhole opened up in the middle of the highway and everything is backed up for miles. Their neighbors are walking home from the highway. Everyone has their head in their hands and no one even cares anymore because apparently for the last 14 months, the world has been ending. People really think these are the end of days, and this is where we start in Act 3. Now, Ejiofor's Marty does his best to live in this difficult world, and he keeps his head up high. But like a lot of people in this world, he talks to his ex-wife, Felicia, played by Karen Gillan. Ejiofor and Gillian talk on the phone like a lot of people would. They talk about the past, they talk about the good days, and they wonder about the future. At work, Gillian's Felicia pays no mind to the gossip the other doctors and nurses take part in. But at home, on the phone, over a glass of wine, she pours her heart out to ex-husband Marty. The world is coming to an end, and she knows it. And then something magical happened in the film because Ejiofor's Marty recites Carl Sagan to Felicia. Now, I don't know about you, but at a certain point in my childhood, I found Carl Sagan. I remember watching The Cosmos growing up, and Ejiofor's Marty uses an anecdote from a Carl Sagan episode to soothe Felicia. He reminds her of Carl Sagan's cosmic calendar. a theory which utilizes a 12-month calendar broken up into the days of our year, with January 1st at midnight being the Big Bang and the beginning of the universe, and ending with right now, this moment, being December 31st at 11:59 and 59 seconds. That would encompass all of modern science and technology. Just 3 seconds before, at 11:59 and 56 seconds, would recorded human history have even begun. He soothes her by letting her know that we are just a small blip in a vast universe, but that what we do here is important too. It's a moment that will come up later in the film because it's a moment that's important to the life of Chuck. Because you see, when Chuck was a boy, Chuck was soothed by Carl Sagan and learned this fact. We don't know it now because we won't learn that until Act 1, but the structure of this film allows us to break into the mind of Chuck. You see, Ejiofor and Gillian's world is not coming to an end. Chuck's life is. And just because things were getting interesting, we're gonna go to Act 2. And this is exactly what Mike Flanagan does in the life of Chuck. Marty and Felicia hold hands and watch the stars blot out of existence as Ejiofor's character whispers one last time, "I love you." Director Mike Flanagan cuts to black and Act 2 begins. So it's fitting that Act 2 finally introduces us to the titular character Chuck, who until now had only been a meme and an advertisement and a bit of a Twilight Zone-esque question mark. Who is this Chuck? Who appeared everywhere in these characters' lives. Almost everyone that they would interact with had also seen these ads for Chuck. So how was Chuck so important to all these people, but they didn't even know who he was? Well, when we meet Chuck, he's just a regular guy in a suit and tie going to work. If I remember correctly, we don't even start the chapter with Chuck. We start with Taylor Gordon, also known as the Pocket Queen. I could tell right off the bat that this was a real drummer. I was excited personally because I like to play drums in my spare time, and I've been playing since I was a kid, so whenever I watch films, I can always tell if someone's actually playing the drums or not. Whiplash was the closest I've ever seen to someone really playing the drums, and I think Whiplash lore tells a story that he learned all the parts, but here and there, a real drummer knows. And with Taylor Gordon, there was never a moment's doubt that this girl was playing the drums, and she was rocking hard. She's playing ghost notes, she's hitting the offbeats, and even the way she was talking about playing the drums made the drummer in me smile. And fun fact for anyone who wants to know more about Taylor Gordon, but she is not an actress. This is her one and only credit on Letterboxd. I had to do some Googling to figure out who she was. She doesn't even have a picture on the website, so we get to witness a real drummer busking on the street for Tom Hiddleston's Charles Chuck Krantz. An incredibly pivotal scene in the film. What initially seemed like a sweet moment in the trailers and ad campaign, immediately to me meant more. When Chuck stops in the streets and starts to first tap his feet and then point his fingers in the air, he has a quick flashback of cooking and dancing with his grandma. I knew right there in that moment, Chuck had had a stroke. But actually, it was a brain tumor. It reminded me of the 1996 film Phenomenon, starring John Travolta, Forrest Whitaker, Robert Duvall, and directed by John Turteltaub. In the film, Travolta's character suffers a brain tumor, but everyone thinks he gets supernatural powers. I could tell in this moment, whether it was a brain tumor, a stroke, or an aneurysm, Chuck was having his phenomena moment. Something about the way Taylor Gordon's drum busking spoke to Charles Krantz that day, and in that moment his brain allowed him to do something that he had been wanting to do for 25 years. And Chuck dances confidently. He creates a crowd, dances with a beautiful woman played by Janice Halliday, and they have the time of their lives. It is an afternoon to remember. Dancing, laughing, and new friendships. But for the eagle-eyed and anyone paying attention, we know we're in Act 2, and we know we're meeting Chuck. And something mysterious is going on. What is the deal with Chuck? Why is this film called The Life of Chuck? Why did he just spend the whole afternoon dancing? What is the point of this story? And as the film moves into Act 1, we start with a younger Chuck. This Charles Krantz lives with his Bubby and Zadie after losing his entire family in a horrific car accident. Mia Sara and Mark Hamill adopt their grandson, and he spends his young adult life living in an old Victorian house with a locked-away attic that his alcoholic grandfather won't let him in. It is a tale as old as time, and yet it is incredibly interesting. We want to know what's behind that door because, way back in the beginning of the film, in Act 3, our initial main character, Marty Anderson, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, had looked at that exact same door while he was on the phone with Felicia, his ex-wife. It was a blink or you'll miss it moment, but I remember wondering what was behind that door. And as the film closes on its last and final mystery, and now that we're in Act 1, we finally learn the answer to Chuck's lifelong question, the mystery behind the locked attic door. And as he opens that door, what he sees, I think, is open to interpretation. And I'd like to leave that open-ended here in this video for you as well, because I do highly recommend seeing the film. And if you've listened to some of the spoilers in this review, I think it's important to note that these only serve to enhance the film. If you were interested in this movie, there's still a ton to dig into. There are characters in Act 3 within the multitudes of Chuck's mind that I can do no justice to in this review. But the acting in this movie is outstanding. Even the smallest bit characters and single line throwaways are all delivered here with gravitas and realism. Somehow Mike Flanagan delivers an eerie and mysterious yet hopeful poem, an ode to life and existence. The life of Chuck tells the story of you and me and all of us, because within each of our minds, we contain multitudes. And that is the beautiful message of the life of Chuck, because even after only a great 39 years, within Chuck's mind, he created all of existence, everything that we've ever known, every person you've ever seen, every king, queen, love, romance, every episode of Cosmos from Carl Sagan, it has all existed here, right behind Chuck's two eyes, right between his ears. It's a beautiful message, it's a beautiful film, and I highly recommend it. So go check out The Life of Chuck. Have you seen The Brutalist yet? Check out my review here, or my controversial take on Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. I appreciate it more than you know. Like, subscribe. This was Film School Dad.